She spent her last $200 to buy a broken man at auction, a man with dead eyes and chains on his wrists, a man everyone said was a killer. She was 5 months pregnant, alone. Her husband murdered by the most powerful man in the territory. What she did not know was that the stranger she just bought carried a secret, a promise made to her dead husband's sister. A debt that would lead him straight into the crossfire of the very monster who destroyed everything she loved, and the love she had been praying for her whole life. This story reminds us that love does not always arrive the way we expect. Sometimes it comes broken. Sometimes it comes in chains. Sometimes the person who saves us is the one who needed saving too. The lesson here is simple but powerful. Two wounded people can heal each other if they are brave enough to try. And choosing love over revenge is the greatest victory a person can win. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button and let us know in the comments. Have you ever found love or hope in an unexpected place? Share your story below. And if you want more tales of courage, redemption, and second chances, subscribe to our channel and ring that notification bell so you never miss a new story. Now sit back, relax, and let this story unfold. There are moments that change everything. Moments when fate reaches down and rearranges the pieces of your life like cards on a gambling table. Clara Thornton did not know it yet, but she was standing at the edge of such a moment on that cold October morning in 1882. The auction yard in Thunder Creek smelled of horses and desperation. Clara pulled her shawl tighter against the wind that swept down from the Rocky Mountains, carrying the first bitter promise of winter. Around her, ranchers and miners pressed close, their breath fogging in the autumn air as they waited for the labor auction to begin. She should not have been here. A widow, 5 months pregnant, alone in a crowd of rough men. But Clara Thornton had run out of options 3 months ago when they buried her husband William in the hard Montana soil. The ranch was dying. Every hand she had employed fled within weeks of William's death. Some said Thornton Ridge was cursed. Others whispered that working there meant crossing the wrong people. Whatever the reason, Clara found herself with 500 acres of good land, 40 head of scattered cattle, and no one willing to help her save them. So here she stood, ready to buy a man like livestock because pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. The auctioneer mounted his platform and began calling out lots. Men shuffled forward in chains, their eyes dull with shame or defiance. Clara watched each one, calculating. She needed someone strong enough to work through winter, desperate enough to stay, but not so dangerous that she would be trading one threat for another. A shadow fell across her. She turned to find Silas Garrett standing too close, his expensive suit out of place among the rough wool and leather of the crowd. He was the wealthiest man in the territory, owner of the largest ranch for 100 miles, and he had been circling her property like a vulture since William died. "Mr. Garrett." Her voice was flat. "Mrs. Thornton." He tipped his hat with false courtesy. "What a surprise to see you here. A woman in your condition, out among such rough company. I can handle rough company. I am sure you can." His smile did not reach his eyes, but surely there is no need. "My offer still stands. $300 for your land, cash money. You could start fresh somewhere civilized. Denver, perhaps. The answer is still no." Garrett's smile thinned. The answer should be yes. Before winter comes. Before something unfortunate happens to a woman alone. Clara met his gaze without flinching. "Are you threatening me, Mr. Garrett?" "Merely concerned. These mountains are dangerous for those without protection." He walked away before she could respond. Clara's hands trembled beneath her shawl, but she kept her face stone still. She would not give him the satisfaction of seeing her fear. The auction continued. Men came and went, none of them right, and then the auctioneer called out a name that made the crowd go quiet. Next lot, Jonas McAllister, owing $200 to the Thunder Creek Trading Company, 1 year's labor to the highest bidder. 2 deputies dragged a man forward in chains. Clara's breath caught in her throat. He was enormous, easily the largest man she had ever seen. 6.5 feet of muscle and scar tissue, with a wild beard and hair that hung past his shoulders. But it was not his size that struck her. It was his eyes. Gray as storm clouds, looking at nothing, expecting nothing. The eyes of a man who had already given up on living. Around her the crowd muttered, "That is Bear McAllister, the bounty hunter. Heard he killed 20 men. Heard he went mad. Lives up in the mountains like an animal. Who would be fool enough to buy that?" No one bid. The auctioneer dropped the price. 200. 150. 100. Still nothing. Clara studied the man called Bear. His clothes hung loose on his massive frame, as if he had stopped eating regular meals long ago. Bruises marked his face. Old scars disappeared beneath his collar. He looked like something broken, something discarded. But his hands... Clara looked at his hands. They were calloused and scarred, yes, but they were the hands of a man who had worked, built things, not just destroyed them. And there was something else. Despite the chains, despite the humiliation of standing on that platform, he held himself with a strange dignity. Not proud, just patient, like a man waiting for something he knew would never come. Clara recognized that look. She saw it in her own mirror every morning. Before she could stop herself, she called out, $200. Every head turned. The crowd parted around her like water around a stone. The auctioneer squinted. "Ma'am? I said $200 for the full year." She pulled the leather pouch from beneath her shawl. Every cent she had left in the world. Everything William's meager life insurance had paid. Her entire future, counted out in gold coins. Silence stretched across the auction yard. Then the auctioneer brought down his hammer. Sold. To Mrs. Clara Thornton. For the first time, the man called Bear looked at her. Really looked. Their eyes met across the muddy yard. Something passed between them. Recognition, maybe. One wounded creature seeing another. Clara did not understand it then. She would not understand it for months to come. She only knew that in that moment something shifted in the universe. Some door opened that could never be closed again. The deputies removed his chains. He rubbed his raw wrists, watching her with those gray storm cloud eyes. Clara walked toward him, her heart pounding against her ribs. "I have a ranch, Thornton Ridge, 10 miles north of town." She kept her voice steady. "I need a man who can work. Fix fences, tend cattle, get me through winter." He said nothing. "You will sleep in the barn. You do not come in the house. You do not touch me. You do not touch anything that is not ranch work." She lifted her chin. "Do your year, and you are free. Understood?" A long pause. Then, in a voice rough as gravel from disuse, "Understood." They walked to her wagon in silence. He climbed into the back without being asked, keeping distance between them. Clara took the reins and guided the horses toward the mountain road. Behind them, Silas Garrett watched from the boardwalk. His expression did not change, but his eyes followed them until they disappeared over the ridge. He turned to the man beside him, a cold-eyed gunman named Colt Brennan. "Find out everything about Jonas McAllister, where he came from, what he is running from. And if he is a problem?" Garrett's smile was thin as a knife blade. "Then we make him disappear, same as we did with William Thornton." The ride to Thornton Ridge took 2 hours. They spoke perhaps a dozen words the entire way. As the ranch came into view, Clara felt the familiar weight settle on her chest. It had been beautiful once. Rolling hills, strong timber, a creek running clear through the north pasture. But 3 months of neglect had taken their toll. Fences sagged, the barn roof leaked. Cattle wandered unfenced across land that should have been winter-ready weeks ago. Jonas surveyed the damage with eyes that missed nothing. "It is worse than it looks," Clara said. "It looks bad. Then it is worse than that." Almost a joke, almost. He did not smile, but something flickered in those dead gray eyes, something that might have been respect. He found a dry corner in the barn and spread the single blanket she gave him without complaint. Clara watched from the porch, one hand resting on her belly where the baby moved. She had bought a broken man to save a dying ranch. God help them both. That night, alone in her bed, Clara stared at the ceiling and tried to pray. But the only words that came were the ones she had whispered every night since William died. Please, please send someone to help me. Someone strong enough to fight what is coming. Someone who will not run. She did not know that her prayer had already been answered. She did not know that the broken man sleeping in her barn carried more than just his own pain. He carried a promise made to a dying woman, a debt owed to the brother Clara had buried, and a love she had given up hoping for. But she would learn. In time, she would learn everything. Dawn came cold and gray over Thornton Ridge. Clara woke to a sound she had not heard in months, the steady rhythm of hammer-striking nail. She pulled on her robe and walked to the window. In the pale morning light, Jonas McAllister was already working. He had found the tools in the barn and started on the fence rail closest to the house. His movements were efficient and practiced. A man who knew how to build things. She watched him for a long moment before turning away to dress. By the time she brought breakfast to the porch, he had finished 3 sections of fence that should have taken a full day. You did not have to start this early, she said, setting the plate on the railing. Could not sleep. She did not ask why. She knew the look of someone haunted by dreams. He ate mechanically, like fuel rather than pleasure, but he ate everything she gave him. When he finished, he set the plate aside and looked at her directly. What happened to your husband? The question hit her like a fist. He was killed 3 months ago, chasing cattle rustlers, they said. They said? Clara wrapped her arms around herself. I do not know what to believe anymore. Jonas studied her face. Whatever he saw there, he did not comment on it. Tell me about this land. Who wants it and why? Clara sat down on the porch step, keeping distance between them. Silas Garrett. He owns the biggest ranch in the territory. Been trying to buy Thornton Ridge since before William died. Made 5 offers, each one lower than the last. When William refused, things started going wrong. Fences cut, cattle scattered. Then William died, and everyone who worked for us disappeared. You think Garrett is behind it? I think Garrett is behind everything bad that happens in this valley, but I cannot prove it. Jonas was quiet for a long time. Then we watch and we wait, and we make this place strong enough that he cannot take it easy. We? The word slipped out before Clara could stop it. Jonas met her eyes. I owe a debt, Mrs. Thornton, to someone who cannot collect it anymore. Until that debt is paid, your fight is my fight. Before Clara could ask what he meant, he picked up his tools and walked toward the north pasture. The days fell into a rhythm. Jonas worked from dawn to dark, barely speaking, but the ranch slowly came back to life. Fences mended, cattle gathered, the barn roof stopped leaking. He had a gift for fixing broken things, Clara realized, as if he understood how they felt. She worked alongside him when she could, though she tired easily now. The baby was growing, demanding more of her strength each day. She tried to hide her condition beneath loose dresses, but on the 4th morning, the secret came undone. She was climbing a ladder to reach a storage shelf in the barn when her foot slipped. She fell. Jonas caught her before she hit the ground. His arms wrapped around her, cradling her against his chest as he absorbed the impact against a hay bale. For a moment, they were tangled together. She could feel his heart hammering. He could feel the curve of her belly pressed against him. His eyes dropped, widened. You are with child. 5 months. She pulled away, defensive. William's baby. A long silence stretched between them. Clara waited for the judgment, the accusation. What kind of woman buys a strange man when she is carrying her dead husband's child? Instead, Jonas said quietly, You should have told me. You should not be climbing ladders. I do not have a choice. You do now. Something shifted between them in that moment. Not romance. Not yet. But understanding. Two wounded people recognizing each other's scars. From now on, Jonas said, I do the climbing, I do the heavy lifting. You tell me what needs doing and I do it. I am not helpless. No. He met her eyes. You are the strongest woman I have ever met. But strength does not mean doing everything alone. Clara felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. Why do you care? You do not even know me. Jonas was quiet for a moment. Then, I knew your husband's sister, Rose. Clara went still. Rose died 2 years ago, before Clara even married William. She had been kind, gentle, already sick with the consumption that would take her life. William never spoke of her without tears in his eyes. How did you know Rose? I saved her once, long time ago, before everything went wrong. Jonas stared at his scarred hands. She wrote to me, before she died, told me about this place, about her brother and his wife. She said you were strong. Strongest woman she had ever met. Clara's throat tightened. She led me here, Jonas said quietly. I do not know how or why, but Rose led me here, and I am going to keep the promise I made to her. What promise? To protect what she loved. That night, Clara lay awake for hours. The baby moved inside her, restless and alive. She pressed her hand to the swell of her belly and thought about promises. William had promised to take care of her. He had failed, through no fault of his own. Her father had promised she would be safe. He had failed, too. Every man she had ever trusted had broken their word in the end. But Jonas McAllister made no promises to her. Only to a dead woman, only to a ghost. And somehow, that made her believe him. The next morning, she found something on the porch. A cradle, hand-carved from oak, sanded smooth. The edges rounded so no splinter could ever touch small hands. No note, no explanation. But when she saw Jonas later, sawdust clung to his sleeves. The cradle, she said. Her voice caught. Baby is going to need somewhere to sleep. You did not have to do that. I know. She touched his arm. The first time she had voluntarily touched him. Brief, gentle, testing whether he was real. Thank you, Jonas. First time she used his first name. He did not smile, but something in his gray eyes shifted, softened. And Clara Thornton, who had spent 5 months building walls around her heart, felt the first crack form. That evening, Silas Garrett received a visitor at his ranch. Colt Brennan sat across from him, trail dust still coating his clothes. What did you find? Brennan pulled a folded paper from his coat. A wanted poster, old and weathered. Jonas McAllister, they call him Bear, used to be the most feared bounty hunter in 5 territories. Garrett read the poster, his expression unchanging. Wanted for questioning and the deaths of 11 men. All members of the Blackwood gang, Brennan said. McAllister hunted them down after they killed his family. Wife and daughter burned alive in their cabin. Garrett set the poster down. What else? The gang's leader escaped, man named Victor Blackwood. McAllister has been searching for him ever since. Garrett's fingers drummed on his desk. Then he smiled. This is useful information, Mr. Brennan, very useful indeed. You want me to handle him? Not yet. Let him get comfortable. Let him think he is safe. And when he lets his guard down? Garrett picked up the wanted poster and studied the face of Jonas McAllister. Then we remind him that no one escapes their past. Not in this territory. October deepened into November. The first real cold settled over Thornton Ridge like a blanket made of ice. Clara watched the sky each morning, reading the clouds the way her father had taught her. Winter was coming early this year. She could feel it in her bones. But the ranch was stronger now than it had been in months. Jonas worked like 3 men, rising before dawn and stopping only when darkness made labor impossible. The north fence stood solid. The cattle were gathered in the protected south pasture. The root cellar was stocked with preserves and salted meat. And somewhere in those weeks of shared labor, something else had changed too. The accidental touches became less accidental. A hand steadying her elbow on rough ground, fingers brushing when she passed him a tool. The space between them shrank inch by inch until breathing the same air felt intimate. Clara told herself it meant nothing. She told herself that every night before she fell asleep. On a Tuesday morning, the sky turned iron gray at noon. Jonas read the signs immediately. A lifetime in these mountains had taught him what that color meant. "Storm coming," he said. "Bad one. We need to get the cattle into the south pasture before it hits." They worked frantically through the afternoon, herding scattered animals toward shelter. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in 2 hours. The wind picked up, carrying the first stinging flakes of snow. By late afternoon, they had saved most of the herd. But 3 head were still missing, including the pregnant heifer Clara had been carefully tending for months. "I am going after them," Clara said. "Number 1, I will go. You do not know this land. There is a box canyon on the north ridge. They shelter there when storms come. I can find it in the dark." Jonas caught her arm. "You are 6 months pregnant, Clara. You are not going anywhere." "You do not give me orders, Mr. McAllister." She pulled free. "Those cattle are worth more than we can afford to lose, and you are worth more than any cattle." The words hung between them. Clara stared at him. Jonas looked away first, but his jaw was tight. His hands had curled into fists at his sides. "Please." The word seemed to cost him something. "Let me go. Let me do what you hired me to do." But Clara was already walking toward the stable. "I know these mountains, Jonas. I have ridden them since I was a girl. I will be back before the storm hits." She mounted her mare and rode into the gathering darkness before he could stop her. She found the cattle exactly where she expected, huddled in the box canyon, confused and frightened, but alive. Getting them out took longer than planned. The snow started falling before she was halfway home. Within an hour, visibility dropped to nothing. White-out conditions. The world reduced to swirling white and howling wind. Clara's mare stumbled, went down. Clara hit the snow hard, the impact jarring through her entire body. For a terrible moment she lay still, one hand pressed to her belly. Terrified, something had happened to the baby. A kick, small but strong. The baby was fine, thank God the baby was fine. But Clara was not. Her ankle throbbed where she had twisted it in the fall. The mare was injured, not badly, but too lame to carry a rider. The temperature was still dropping. She started walking, leading the limping horse, the cattle following behind by instinct. But the world was white in every direction. She could not tell if she was heading toward home or away from it. The cold crept into her bones. Her hands went numb. Her thoughts grew sluggish. "Please," she whispered through frozen lips, "please, God, if you are listening, I am not ready to die. My baby is not ready to die." Jonas found her 2 hours later. He had followed her tracks as far as he could before the snow covered them. After that, he relied on instinct and prayer, riding in widening circles through the white hell, calling her name until his throat went raw. When he finally spotted her, she was less than a quarter mile from home, walking in the wrong direction, stumbling with each step. He was off his horse and running before he fully processed what he was seeing. "Clara! Clara, can you hear me?" She turned. Her face was pale as the snow around her. Ice crystals clung to her eyelashes. "Jonas?" He pulled off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. She was shaking so hard she could barely stand. "You stubborn, reckless woman." He lifted her into his arms like she weighed nothing. "What were you thinking? Had to save the cattle. Damn the cattle." He carried her toward his horse. "You almost died. You and the baby both." Through the haze of cold and exhaustion, Clara felt something crack inside her chest. He cared. This broken, damaged man actually cared whether she lived or died. She leaned into his warmth and let him save her. Back at the cabin, Jonas worked with desperate efficiency. He built up the fire until it roared, found dry clothes for her, made her change while he faced the wall, his hands clenched at his sides. When she was dressed, he wrapped her in every blanket in the house and pressed a cup of hot tea into her trembling hands. "Drink, all of it." She obeyed. The warmth spread through her, chasing away the deadly cold. Jonas knelt beside her chair, checking her hands and feet for frostbite. His touch was gentle, despite the size of his hands. When he was satisfied she was not seriously injured, he sat back on his heels and looked at her. "Do not ever do that again. I had to save the cattle. You had to save yourself." He caught her hands in his. "Do you understand? You are more important than any animal on this ranch. You are more important than the ranch itself." "Why?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "Why do you care so much? You barely know me." Jonas was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough, broken. "3 years ago, I came home and found my cabin burned to the ground. My wife Sarah was inside, my daughter Lily. 3 years old, she used to call me Papa Bear." He closed his eyes. "I was not there to protect them. I was off chasing outlaws, playing hero while they burned. Oh, God." "Jonas." Clara's hands tightened on his. "I spent 2 years hunting the men who did it. Killed 11 of them. The leader got away." He swallowed hard. "After that, I went into the mountains to die. Spent a year up there waiting for the cold to take me, but it never did. Why did you come down?" "Because Rose's letter found me." Jonas opened his eyes and looked at her. "She sent it before she died. Told me about you, about William. Asked me to keep you safe if anything happened." "Rose sent you?" "She said you were strong, worth protecting." Jonas touched Clara's cheek, the gesture so gentle it made her heart ache. "I did not believe her, did not believe anything anymore. But then I saw you at that auction, standing alone in a crowd of men, ready to buy a stranger because you refused to give up. And now? Now I know Rose was right." He leaned his forehead against hers. "You are worth protecting, Clara Thornton. You and that baby both. And I will die before I let anyone hurt you." Clara kissed him. She did not plan it, did not think about it. One moment she was looking into his storm-gray eyes, and the next her lips were pressed against his. He froze, 1 heartbeat, 2. Then he kissed her back. His hands cupped her face like she was something precious. His mouth moved over hers like a man tasting water after years in the desert. All the grief and loneliness of 3 years poured into that kiss. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jonas pulled back. "I should not have done that." "Why not?" "Because you are carrying another man's child. Because I am broken beyond repair. Because everyone I love dies, and I cannot watch it happen again." He stood and walked to the door. "Get some rest. I will check on the animals. Jonas." "Please, Clara." He did not turn around. "If you have any mercy, let me go." The door closed behind him. Clara sat alone by the fire, the taste of him still on her lips, her heart cracking open like spring ice. In the barn, Jonas pressed his palms against the cold wood of a support beam and tried to remember how to breathe. What was he doing? He had sworn never to love again, sworn never to let anyone close enough to hurt him. And now here he was, kissing a pregnant widow in the middle of a blizzard, feeling things he had buried 3 years ago. Sarah's face floated in his memory, her gentle smile, the way she used to laugh at his terrible jokes. "I am sorry," he whispered into the darkness. "I am so sorry." But the ghost did not answer. And when he finally fell into exhausted sleep, he did not dream of Sarah. He dreamed of green eyes and auburn hair, of a stubborn woman who would not give up even when the world conspired against her. He dreamed of Clara. 2 weeks passed after the storm. Neither of them spoke of the kiss. They worked side by side through the short winter days, rebuilding what the blizzard had damaged. Their hands touched sometimes, their eyes met, but the walls were back up, higher than before. Clara told herself it was better this way. She almost believed it. Father Miguel Santos arrived on a December morning, his black cassock stark against the white snow. Jonas recognized him from 20 yards away. The old priest had heard his confession more times than he could count, had buried Sarah and Lily when Jonas was too broken to stand at their graves. Father. Jonas met him at the gate. What brings you here? The priest's weathered face was grave. I have something for you, my son. Something that could not wait. They sat in the barn while Clara watched from the porch. Jonas could feel her eyes on him, but he did not call her over. Not yet. Father Miguel pulled a worn envelope from his saddlebag. This arrived at my church 2 months ago, from Denver. The priest held it out. Rose wrote it before she died. Asked me to deliver it to you when the time was right. Jonas took the letter with trembling hands. Rose's handwriting, shaky from illness, but still recognizable. Dear Jonas, the letter began. If you are reading this, I am already with God. Do not be sad for me. I'm going to see Mama and Papa again. I need to tell you something about the man who bought the Harrison Ranch 3 years ago. The one who calls himself Silas Garrett. William does not know I am writing this. He thinks he is protecting me by keeping secrets. But I see more than he realizes. There is something wrong about Garrett, something familiar that I cannot place. William will not tell me everything, but I have heard him talking in his sleep. He says a name over and over, Blackwood. He says it like a curse. I do not know what it means. But if you ever come to Thunder Creek, be careful. Please. Something evil lives here, hiding behind a gentleman's mask. Your sister in spirit, Rose. Jonas read the letter 3 times. His hands had stopped shaking. Everything had gone very still inside him. Blackwood, Victor Blackwood, the man who had ordered his family burned alive. Jonas, Father Miguel said quietly, there is more. The priest pulled out a second document. Official-looking, stamped with territorial seals. I have been making inquiries. Carefully. There are records that show Silas Garrett arrived in Montana Territory 3 years ago. The same year Victor Blackwood disappeared from Colorado. Jonas looked up. And Rose believed William knew the truth. Father Miguel leaned forward. William was investigating Garrett before he died, collecting evidence, planning to contact the federal marshals. But he died before he could finish. Yes. The priest's voice was heavy. An accident, they called it. Chasing cattle rustlers. Jonas felt the cold spreading through his chest. A familiar feeling. The feeling he got before violence. It was not an accident. Number. Father Miguel shook his head. I do not believe it was. Clara appeared in the barn doorway. She had seen enough. The look on Jonas's face, the tension in his massive shoulders, something had changed. What is happening, she demanded. What does that letter say? Jonas looked at her, and Clara felt her blood run cold. She had seen grief in his eyes, pain, exhaustion, but never this. This was rage, cold, controlled, deadly rage. The man who killed my family, Jonas said quietly. I have been searching for him for 3 years. Clara came closer. And he is here. Jonas stood, and the letter crumpled in his fist. Victor Blackwood is here, has been here all along. Clara's heart stopped. Who is it? Silas Garrett. The name hit her like a physical blow. No, that is not possible. Garrett is a businessman. He goes to church every Sunday. He gives money to the school. He is a murderer, Clara. A monster wearing a gentleman's mask, just like Rose said. Jonas gripped her shoulders. And if he killed my family, then he killed William too. Everything Clara thought she knew came crashing down around her. William had been investigating Garrett. That was why he had been so secretive in the months before his death. Why he had stayed up late reading documents. Why he had made mysterious trips to town without explaining where he went. He knew, she whispered. He knew who Garrett really was. And Garrett found out. Jonas's jaw was tight. Your husband did not die chasing rustlers. He was murdered to keep him quiet. Clara's knees gave out. Jonas caught her, lowered her onto a hay bale, knelt before her. "I am sorry," he said. "I am so sorry, Clara." But Clara was not thinking about William. She was thinking about the man who had stood over her at the auction, who had smiled and made threats, who had circled her ranch like a wolf waiting for the right moment to strike. All this time, a monster had been living 10 miles away, and she had not known. That night they sat together by the fire. Father Miguel had gone, promising to send word to the federal marshals in Denver. But help was weeks away, and Garrett, Blackwood, was not going to wait. "What do we do?" Clara asked. "We prepare." Jonas stared into the flames. "We make this place a fortress, and when he comes, we fight. Can we win? I do not know." He turned to look at her. "But I am not running. Not this time." Clara reached out, took his hand. "Neither am I." His fingers tightened around hers. "Clara, I need you to know something. If it comes down to you or revenge, I choose you." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I have spent 3 years wanting to kill Victor Blackwood, dreaming about it, planning for it, but now—" He shook his head. "Now there is something more important." "The baby?" "You." Jonas lifted her hand to his lips. "Both of you. I made a promise to Rose. But I am making a new promise now. To you." "What promise?" "That I will not let my past destroy our future. Whatever happens, I will not become the monster he wants me to be." Clara felt tears sliding down her cheeks. She had married William because her father arranged it. Had spent 2 years as a wife without ever truly loving her husband. Had convinced herself that passion was a fairy tale and devotion was enough. But this man, this broken, damaged, beautiful man, he made her feel things she had never felt before. "I need to tell you something," she said. "Anything. When William died," she forced the words out, "I did not cry. Not once. Not at the funeral, not alone, not ever." She closed her eyes. "What kind of woman does that make me?" "A woman who never loved him." Jonas's voice was gentle. "It does not make you evil, Clara. It makes you human. I feel so guilty." "Do not." He cupped her face in his hands. "William knew what kind of marriage you had. He married you anyway because he was a good man who wanted to protect you. That is why he investigated Garrett. Not for love, but for honor. How do you know that?" "Because Rose told me, in her letters. She said William admired you, respected you. But he never expected you to love him the way he loved your land, your strength, your fire." Jonas smiled sadly. "Some marriages are built on passion. Others are built on partnership. Both can be good." "And what are we building?" Clara whispered. Jonas leaned his forehead against hers. "Something new. Something neither of us expected." He kissed her then, soft and slow. A promise instead of a demand. When they finally pulled apart, Clara knew 2 things with absolute certainty. She was going to fight for this ranch, and she was going to fight for this man. Whatever came next, they would face it together. December wrapped Thornton Ridge in ice and silence. The days grew shorter. The nights stretched long and cold. But inside the cabin, something warm was growing. Jonas moved into the house after the first hard freeze. Clara told herself it was practical. The barn was too cold. He would be no good to anyone if he froze to death. But the truth was simpler. She wanted him near. He slept on a pallet by the door, close enough to respond to any threat, far enough to maintain propriety. But in the small hours of the night when the fire burned low and the wind howled outside, Clara could hear him breathing, steady and deep when sleep came easy, ragged and broken when the nightmares took him. She learned his sounds the way she had learned the sounds of the ranch, the creak of his weight on loose floorboards, the soft curse when he stubbed his toe in the dark, the way he hummed tunelessly while he worked, old hymns and army songs mixed together. She learned him, and slowly, carefully, she let him learn her too. On a morning 2 weeks before Christmas, Jonas asked her to teach him to shoot properly. Clara stared at him. "You are a bounty hunter. You have killed a dozen men, and you want me to teach you to shoot? I know how to shoot people." Jonas's mouth quirked. "I do not know how to shoot dinner. Tracking deer is different from tracking outlaws." So Clara took him into the hills above the ranch and showed him how her father had taught her, how to read tracks in snow, how to move quietly through brush, how to wait, patient and still, for the perfect shot. They brought down a buck that afternoon, a clean kill, meat enough for weeks. Walking back to the ranch, the deer slung over Jonas's broad shoulders, Clara caught herself smiling. When had she last smiled like this? She could not remember. Christmas Eve came soft and quiet. They decorated a small pine tree with scraps of ribbon and dried berries. Clara made a meal from the venison they had hunted together, potatoes and carrots from the root cellar, apple pie from the last of the fall preserves. It was not much, but it was more than Clara had expected to have this year. After dinner, she handed Jonas a package wrapped in brown paper. "For you." He opened it carefully. Inside lay a pair of gloves, warm wool, knitted in a pattern of mountains and stars. "I made them," Clara said, "for the cold. Your hands are always cracked from the wind." Jonas stared at the gloves for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out his own gift. A small wooden horse, carved from oak, sanded smooth, small enough to fit in a baby's hand. "For the little one," he said quietly, "when the time comes." Clara's vision blurred with tears. "It is beautiful. It is just wood. Stop saying that." She pressed the horse to her heart. "Things you make are not just anything." She kissed him. He let her. They stayed like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms by the fire, the Christmas tree glowing softly in the corner. When they finally pulled apart, Jonas's eyes were wet. "I did not think I would ever have this again," he said. "Have what?" "Peace." New Year's Eve. They stood on the porch watching distant fireworks rise over Thunder Creek, small blooms of light against the dark sky. Clara shivered in the cold. Jonas removed his coat and draped it over her shoulders. His hands lingered. "You will freeze," she said. "I have survived worse." She turned to look at him. In the faint light from the window, his face was half shadow, half gold. "What are you thinking about?" He was quiet for a moment. "I am thinking about time. How strange it is. 3 years ago I wanted to die, spent every day wishing for it, and now I want to live so badly it terrifies me." Clara reached up and touched his face, the beard she had trimmed for him last week, the scar that ran across his cheek. "I know what you mean," she said. "I have spent 6 months trying to survive, just get through each day, hold on until something changed. And now? Now I do not want to just survive anymore." She stepped closer. "I want to live, really live, with you." Jonas made a sound low in his throat. "Clara, you need to know something. Everyone I have ever loved has died. My parents, Sarah, Lily. Even Rose, who was like a sister to me." He caught her hands in his. "I am terrified that if I let myself love you, you will be next. Then we will be terrified together." Clara pulled his hands to her heart. "I have spent my whole life playing it safe, marrying the man my father chose, following rules, being proper, and it did not protect me from anything. What are you saying?" "I am saying I am done being afraid." She rose on her toes and kissed him softly. "I choose you, Jonas McAllister. All of you. The broken parts and the whole ones." He kissed her back. This kiss was different from before. Not desperate or uncertain. Deep, sure. A promise sealed in the midnight cold. When they finally broke apart, Jonas pressed his forehead to hers. "After this is over," he said. "After Garrett is dealt with and you are safe. Yes? I want to marry you, Clara Thornton. Build a life with you. Raise that baby together. Is that a proposal?" "It is a promise." He smiled, and the sight of it took her breath away. "My promises mean more than any ring." "Then I accept." She kissed him again. Today, tomorrow, and every day after. But happiness does not last. Not when monsters still walk the earth. 3 days into the new year, Clara went to town for supplies. Jonas wanted to accompany her, but the south fence had collapsed overnight. If they did not fix it, they would lose cattle to the wolves. "I will be fine," Clara said. "Garrett will not try anything in broad daylight." "I do not like it." Noted. She smiled and kissed his cheek. "I will be back before sunset." She rode out into the cold morning, her heart lighter than it had been in months. She was 3 miles from town when the riders intercepted her. 3 men. Hard faces, hands resting near their guns. Colt Brennan tipped his hat. "Mrs. Thornton, traveling alone? That is dangerous for a woman in your condition." "Get out of my way," Clara said. "Mr. Garrett wanted us to deliver a message." They pulled her from her horse before she could reach her pistol. She hit the frozen ground hard, fear spiking for the baby. Brennan crouched beside her. "This is your last warning. Sell the ranch, or we take it by force." He grabbed her braid, yanked her head back. "Pretty hair. Think Garrett would like a keepsake?" A voice cut through the cold air. "Let her go!" The 3 men spun. Jonas sat his horse at the edge of the tree line, rifle leveled at Brennan's chest. "Bear McAllister." Brennan straightened slowly. "We have heard stories. Stories do not cover half of it." Jonas's voice was ice. "Now ride away before I show you the rest." Brennan hesitated. Then he mounted his horse, his men following. "This is not over," he said. "Garrett gets what Garrett wants." They rode away into the snow. Jonas was off his horse in seconds, helping Clara up, checking her for injury. "Are you hurt?" "The baby—" "We are fine." She clutched his arm. "You followed me. I could not follow you." Clara laughed, shaky with relief. "I thought I told you I did not need protecting. You do not." Jonas pulled her close. "But I need to protect you. There is a difference." He held her there in the frozen road while her heartbeat slowed and her fear faded. And Clara knew, with the certainty that comes from surviving something terrible, that she would never face anything alone again. This man would stand beside her until the end. Whatever that end might be. January brought the coldest weather anyone could remember. Ice coated the windows each morning. The creek froze solid enough to walk on. Even the wolves retreated to higher ground, leaving the valley in eerie silence. But the weather was not the only thing turning dangerous. Maggie O'Brien rode to Thornton Ridge on a morning so cold her breath froze the moment it left her lips. Clara had known Maggie since childhood. The older woman ran the only saloon in Thunder Creek, a place where secrets traded as freely as whiskey. If something was happening in the territory, Maggie knew about it. "One of Garrett's men got drunk at my place last night," Maggie said. "Started running his mouth before his friends could shut him up." "What did he say?" Maggie's face was grim. "He said William did not die chasing rustlers. Colt Brennan followed him into the canyons that day, shot him off his horse and made it look like an accident." Clara closed her eyes. She had known. Since Jonas told her about Blackwood, she had known her husband was murdered. But hearing it confirmed was different. "There is more." Maggie pulled a crumpled paper from her coat. The drunk dropped this. I grabbed it before anyone noticed. Clara took the paper with numb fingers. William's handwriting. His final letter. "Dear Marshal Cole," the letter began. "I write with evidence of crimes that demand federal attention. The man calling himself Silas Garrett is, in fact, Victor Blackwood, leader of the notorious Blackwood gang responsible for numerous murders, robberies, and other crimes across Montana, Wyoming, and Colorado territories. I have gathered testimony from 2 former gang members now living in the territory, as well as documentation proving Garrett's purchase of the Harrison Ranch was funded by stolen gold from the Helena Bank robbery of 1879. I have not told my wife any of this. Clara knows nothing. I beg you to keep her name out of any investigation to ensure her safety. If something happens to me before you receive this letter, know that Victor Blackwood is responsible. And know that a man named Jonas McAllister has more reason than anyone to see him brought to justice. My sister Rose trusted McAllister with her life. I trust him with my wife's. God protect us all, William Thornton. Clara read the letter 3 times. He knew, she whispered. He was trying to stop Garrett. The right way. He died for it, Jonas said quietly. And I could not even cry for him. Clara looked up, tears streaming down her face. He died protecting me, protecting this ranch, and I could not love him the way he deserved. Jonas knelt before her, took her hands. Listen to me. William knew what kind of marriage you had. He married you anyway because he wanted to protect you. That is why he investigated Garrett, not for love, but for honor. How do you know that? Because Rose told me, in her letters. She said William admired you, respected you, but he never expected you to love him. He just wanted you to be safe. Clara broke then. 3 months of grief she could not feel finally crashed over her. Not grief for a husband she never loved, but grief for a good man who deserved better, who died alone in a canyon because he tried to do the right thing. Jonas held her while she sobbed. When the tears finally slowed, Clara lifted her head. What do we do now? Jonas's face was stone. We finish what William started. We gather evidence. We make sure Garrett pays for everything he has done. And if we cannot wait for the marshals, then we fight. Jonas stood. Whatever it takes, Clara. I will not let him win. The next weeks were a blur of preparation. Father Miguel sent word that Marshal Harrison Cole was on his way from Denver. But winter travel was slow and Blackwood was not going to wait. Jonas sent word to everyone who might stand against Garrett. Tom Wheeler and Miguel Reyes Jr. came first. 2 former Thornton Ranch hands who had fled after William's death. They returned shamefaced but determined. We should never have run, Tom said. William deserved better. Dr. Abraham Wells arrived next. The town physician had quietly documented suspicious deaths connected to Garrett for years. He was old and tired of being afraid. I have been waiting for someone brave enough to use my evidence, he said. I reckon you are that someone. Red Gallagher, the blacksmith, brought rifles and ammunition. I have watched men like Garrett destroy this valley for 30 years, Red said. I will be damned if I miss the chance to see someone stop him. Even Maggie came, armed with a shotgun and a tongue sharp enough to cut steel. Try to stop me, she said when Jonas protested. I have shot men before, and I was not half as motivated as I am now. The night before the expected attack, Jonas and Clara sat alone in their bedroom. She should not have been there. Should have been in town, safe with Maggie until the fighting was over. But Clara had refused to go. This is my home, she said. My land. My baby's inheritance. I am not running. You are 7 months pregnant. I can still shoot. You taught me yourself. Jonas stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Together, then. Together. They did not make love that night. Clara was too exhausted, too afraid. But they held each other in the darkness, her back against his chest, his hand resting on her belly where the baby kicked. Jonas? Yes? If something happens tomorrow, nothing is going to happen. But if it does... She turned in his arms. I want you to know that these past months have been the happiest of my life. I never thought I could feel this way. about anyone. Jonas kissed her forehead. I am going to marry you, Clara Thornton. When this is over, I am going to stand up in front of God and everyone and make you my wife. Is that a promise? The most important one I have ever made. She fell asleep in his arms. Jonas stayed awake, watching the darkness beyond the window, thinking about the man who had destroyed everything he loved. Tomorrow, one of them would die. Jonas was going to make sure it was Blackwood. Dawn broke cold and clear. Jonas stood on the porch, watching dust rise on the distant road. They were coming. The defenders gathered around him. Tom and Miguel with rifles, Red on the barn roof with a sharpshooter's view of the property. Doc Wells in the root cellar with bandages and whiskey. Maggie inside the house with Clara. 7 people against an army. Jonas had faced worse odds in the war, but he had never had so much to lose. The riders crested the hill at noon. 20 men, hard-faced gun hands mounted on fresh horses. At their head, resplendent in a dark coat and polished boots, sat Silas Garrett, Victor Blackwood, the monster Jonas had hunted for 3 years, the man who had taken everything from him. Jonas walked out to meet them, alone, unarmed except for the pistol on his hip. Garrett dismounted with the casual grace of a man who had never worried about anything in his life. Bear McAllister, he smiled. We finally meet properly. Blackwood. Jonas did not smile back. I have been waiting for you. I imagine you have. Garrett pulled off his riding gloves. You have been looking for me for 3 years. Must be frustrating to learn I was right here all along. Your time is over. The marshals know everything. They are coming. The marshals are weeks away. A lot can happen in weeks. Garrett nodded toward the house. I have come to make one final offer. $100 for the property. Take it and walk away. No one needs to die today. You killed my wife. Jonas's voice was flat. You killed my daughter. You killed William Thornton. And I will kill everyone in that house if you do not stand aside. Garrett's smile turned cold. This is business, McAllister. Nothing personal. It is personal to me. Then you are a fool. Garrett turned toward his men. Take the ranch. Kill anyone who resists. The battle erupted like thunder. Gunfire shattered the morning silence. Riders charged from 3 directions. Tom and Miguel opened up from the windows, dropping 2 attackers in the first volley. Jonas was everywhere, rifle in his hands, then pistol when the fighting got close. He moved like a ghost through the chaos, appearing where he was needed most, taking down anyone who came too near the house. 3 years of rage, 3 years of grief, all of it focused into deadly purpose. But Garrett had brought overwhelming force. The barn caught fire within the first hour. Red barely escaped, his sleeve burning, rolling in the snow to put out the flames. Tom took a bullet to the shoulder. Miguel dragged him to the root cellar where Doc Wells was waiting. And still the attackers came. Inside the house, Clara heard boots on the back porch. They are coming in, Maggie hissed. Clara picked up her rifle. The weight was familiar now. Jonas had taught her well. The door burst open. She fired. The first man dropped. Maggie got the second. The third man crashed through the window. Colt Brennan. His knife gleamed in the smoky light. Clara backed away, reaching for her pistol. Brennan was on her before she could draw. His hand closed around her throat. He slammed her against the wall. Garrett says you can live if you sign the deed. He pressed the knife to her belly. Otherwise, mother and child both. Clara could not breathe, could not speak, but she could fight. She drove her knee up hard. Brennan doubled over with a curse. Her hand found the cast-iron skillet on the stove. She swung with everything she had. The impact cracked his skull. He staggered, dazed. Maggie's pistol finished him. Clara stood over his body, gasping, one hand pressed to her belly. The baby kicked, still alive, both of them still alive. Outside, the tide was turning. Half of Garrett's men were down or fleeing. The ranch's defenders had held longer than anyone expected, but Jonas had eyes only for one man. Garrett was trying to escape, mounting his horse, turning toward the mountain trail. Jonas pursued. They met at the edge of the canyon where the earth fell away into shadow, both men bloodied, both breathing hard. End of the line, Blackwood. Jonas leveled his pistol. Step away from the horse. Garrett laughed. Are you going to arrest me? You? A killer with a price on his head? I am going to see you hang. No, you are not. Garrett's eyes glittered. You are going to shoot me. Right here, right now. Because that is what you have wanted for 3 years. Jonas's hand trembled. Do it, Garrett urged. Kill me. Prove you are the monster everyone says you are. 3 years of nightmares, 3 years of grief. One bullet would end it all. Jonas. Clara's voice. She had followed him, limping through the snow, one hand on her belly, determination blazing in her eyes. Do not, she said. He wants you to kill him. If you do, you become him, a murderer, and I will lose you forever. Jonas's finger tightened on the trigger. Sarah and Lily flashed through his mind, their faces, their laughter, the smell of smoke. Then Clara, her green eyes, her stubborn jaw, the baby growing inside her, his family, his new family. Slowly, Jonas lowered the pistol. You are not worth it, he said to Garrett. You will rot in prison for the rest of your miserable life. And every day you will know that I had the chance to kill you and I chose not to. Garrett's face twisted with rage. He went for his gun. Jonas shot him in the hand. Garrett screamed, clutching his ruined fingers. His pistol tumbled into the canyon. Jonas walked forward, put a boot on Garrett's chest, pressed him into the frozen ground. That is my revenge, Jonas said, watching you live with what you have lost. The marshals arrived 3 days later. They found Victor Blackwood bound and guarded, his wounds tended by Dr. Wells. They found a ranch defended by ordinary people who had refused to surrender. They found evidence enough to convict a dozen men. Marshal Cole looked at Jonas with respect. You could have killed him, the marshal said. Most men would have. Most men have not found something worth more than revenge. Jonas looked across the yard to where Clara stood on the porch, blanket wrapped around her shoulders, alive and safe and carrying his future inside her. I have, he said. The trial of Victor Blackwood took place in Helena 2 months later. Clara could not travel. The baby was due any day, and Doc Wells had forbidden her to go farther than the front porch. But Jonas went. He sat in the gallery and watched as witness after witness testified. Former gang members who had turned evidence in exchange for lighter sentences. Townspeople who had suffered under Blackwood's reign. Ben Cartwright, the young ranch hand whose conscience had finally broken. The evidence was overwhelming. Murder, robbery, arson, fraud. 12 counts in all. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. Guilty on all charges. The judge's gavel came down like thunder. Victor Blackwood, the judge intoned, you have been found guilty by a jury of your peers. I hereby sentence you to 25 years hard labor in the Montana Territorial Prison at Deer Lodge. Blackwood lunged from his seat, screaming obscenities. Deputies wrestled him down, cuffed his hands behind his back. His eyes found Jonas across the courtroom. This is not over, McAllister. I will get out. I will find you. Jonas met his gaze without flinching. I will be waiting. They took Blackwood away in chains. Jonas watched the prison wagon disappear down the dusty street, feeling something loosen in his chest that had been tight for 3 years. It was over. Not perfectly. Blackwood still breathed, still walked the earth. But he would spend the rest of his life breaking rocks in the Montana cold. Every day he would remember what he had lost. Every night he would dream of the empire that had crumbled around him. That was justice, not vengeance. Justice. Jonas rode back to Thornton Ridge as fast as his horse would carry him. Spring had come while he was away. Wildflowers bloomed across the valley. The creek ran clear and cold with snow melt. And on the porch of the cabin, Clara was waiting. Her belly was huge now. Any day, Doc Wells kept saying. Could be any hour. But she smiled when she saw Jonas riding up. That smile that made his heart stutter. It is done, she asked. It is done. He dismounted, climbed the steps, took her in his arms. 25 years. He will never hurt anyone again. Clara buried her face in his chest. I was so worried. I kept thinking something would go wrong, that you would not come back. I made you a promise. Jonas tilted her chin up. My promises mean more than words. He kissed her then, soft and deep, the kiss of a man who had finally found his way home. When they broke apart, Clara winced. What is it? She looked down at the puddle spreading beneath her feet. I think the baby is coming. Thomas Jonas McAllister was born just after midnight on a warm March evening. He came into the world red-faced and screaming, with lungs that could wake the dead. Jonas held his son for the first time with tears streaming down his face. He had thought this feeling was lost to him forever, the weight of a newborn in his arms, the miracle of life after so much death. Hello, little man, he whispered. Welcome to the world. Clara lay exhausted but radiant, watching her husband cradle their child. Thomas Jonas, she said, for his real father, and for the man who saved us both. Jonas looked at her. You do not have to do that. I want to. She reached out and touched his face. He is yours, Jonas, in every way that matters. Yours. Jonas pressed his lips to his son's forehead. And in that moment, in a small cabin in the Montana mountains, a broken man finally understood what it meant to be whole. Spring turned to summer. Thornton Ridge flourished under their care. The cattle grew fat on green grass. The crops came in strong. The ranch hands returned, this time to stay. But more important than the land was what grew inside the cabin's walls. A family. Jonas learned to change diapers and rock a fussy infant to sleep. Clara learned to let him share the burden, to stop carrying everything alone. They argued sometimes about how to run the ranch, about how to raise their son, about whether Clara worked too hard or Jonas worried too much. But they never went to bed angry, and every morning they woke up grateful to have found each other. On a warm June evening, they were married. Red Gallagher officiated. He had a preacher's license from 30 years back that he had never let expire. The ceremony was small. Maggie and Doc Wells, Tom and Miguel, Father Miguel, who had traveled from Denver for the occasion. Clara wore a simple cream dress. Jonas wore his one good shirt. They stood beneath the old oak tree behind the house, the same tree where William and Rose were buried. Do you, Jonas McAllister read intoned, take this woman to be your wife? To love and cherish, in sickness and health, until death do you part? I do. And do you, Clara Thornton, take this man to be your husband, to love and cherish in sickness and health, until death do you part? I do. Then, by the power vested in me by the Montana Territory, I pronounce you husband and wife. Red grinned. Kiss her, you fool. Jonas did. The small crowd cheered. Little Thomas, held in Maggie's arms, gurgled with delight. And Clara, wrapped in the arms of the man who had saved her in every way a person could be saved, finally understood what her prayer had meant all those months ago. She had asked for someone strong enough to fight. God had sent her someone strong enough to love. That night, lying together in the bed they now shared, Clara traced the scars on Jonas's chest. Do you ever think about them? She asked softly. Sarah and Lily? Every day. Jonas's voice was gentle. But it does not hurt the same way anymore. The memories feel like light instead of fire. I am glad. He pulled her closer. They would have liked you, Clara. You think so? I know so. He kissed her hair. Sarah would have said you were too stubborn for your own good, and Lily would have loved having a baby brother to boss around. Clara laughed through sudden tears. I wish I could have met them. You will. Someday. Jonas's arms tightened around her, but not for a long, long time. We have too much living to do first." They fell asleep, tangled together, their son breathing softly in his cradle nearby. And in the darkness, the ghosts of the past finally found peace. 5 years later, Clara stood on the porch of a house that had tripled in size since that first desperate winter. The ranch sprawled before her, prosperous and alive. 200 head of cattle grazed in the south pasture. A new barn, bigger and stronger than the one that had burned, stood proudly against the mountain backdrop. But it was not the land that made her smile. It was the sound of laughter floating up from the creek. Thomas, now 5 years old, was trying to teach his little sister Rose Sarah to skip stones. At 2 years old, she was more interested in splashing than skipping. But Thomas was patient. He had his father's steady temperament. Jonas waded in the shallows, keeping watch, his trousers rolled to his knees. He looked up and caught Clara's eye, smiled. That smile still made her heart flutter after all these years. That evening, after the children were in bed, they sat on the porch together. The sun was setting over the Rocky Mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. "Word came from Deer Lodge today," Jonas said quietly. Clara tensed. "Blackwood? Died last winter. Consumption." She waited for relief to wash over her. It did not come. Just a quiet sense of closure. "How do you feel?" she asked. Jonas was silent for a moment. "I thought I would feel triumphant." He stared at the sunset. "I just feel done, like a chapter finally closing." "He is gone," Clara said. "He can never hurt anyone again." "No." Jonas took her hand. "And everything he tried to destroy is thriving." Clara looked out at the land they had built together, the ranch that had nearly killed her to save, the children who would inherit it someday. She had bought a broken man at auction 5 years ago, a man who wanted to die, a man carrying ghosts he thought would haunt him forever. She had not known then that he carried something else too, a promise, a love, a future she had never dared to imagine. "Jonas?" "Yes?" "Do you remember what you said that first day, when I asked if you were going to hurt me?" He smiled. "I said I do not hurt women or children. Everything else depends on what they do first." Clara laughed. "I was so scared of you. This giant, wild man with dead eyes. I thought I had made the worst decision of my life, and now I know it was the best decision I ever made." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You saved me, Jonas McAllister. You saved this ranch. You gave me children and a life I never dreamed was possible. You saved yourself." Jonas pressed a kiss to her hair. "I just showed up at the right time." The stars were appearing now, scattered across the darkening sky like scattered diamonds. "Do you think Rose knew?" Clara asked, "when she wrote that letter? Do you think she knew what would happen?" "I think she hoped." Jonas was quiet for a moment. "I think she saw two broken people who might be able to fix each other." She was right. She usually was. They sat together as the night deepened, watching their ranch settle into peaceful darkness. Somewhere in the house, little Rose Sarah cried out from a dream, and Thomas's small voice murmured comfort. The sounds of family, the sounds of home, sounds of... Later, in the darkness of their bedroom, Jonas held Clara close. "I love you," he said. "Today, tomorrow, and every day after." "I love you too." She kissed him softly. "Thank you for keeping your promise." "Which one?" "All of them. There are moments that change everything. Moments when fate reaches down and rearranges the pieces of your life like cards on a gambling table." Clara Thornton had stood at such a moment on a cold October morning in 1882. She had not known then what the future held, had not known that the broken man in chains would become her husband, her partner, the father of her children. She had only known that she needed help, and help had come. Not in the form she expected, not clean or simple or easy, but real, true, lasting. That was the lesson Clara learned on Thornton Ridge. That was the truth she would teach her children and their children after. Love does not come looking the way you expect. Sometimes it comes in chains. Sometimes it comes broken. Sometimes it comes with scars and silence and ghosts that will never fully fade. But if you are brave enough to reach for it, if you are stubborn enough to fight for it, if you are wise enough to recognize it when it stands before you, love will change everything. The morning sun rose over the Rocky Mountains, painting Thunder Creek Valley in shades of gold. And in a farmhouse built on blood and tears and hope, a family woke to face another day. Together. This content was carefully researched, developed, and manually edited by our team to deliver meaningful stories with valuable life lessons. Every narrative is crafted to entertain, inspire, and empower our audience. We believe that great stories can change lives, and we are committed to bringing you content that matters. Thank you for being part of our community.